Hot. It's a Sunday. Welcome to the Toxic Tour. We're Protect Our Aquifer. We're a nonprofit that's dedicated to protecting our drinking water source, the Memphis Sand Aquifer. So these toxic tours are a way for us to raise awareness about legacy polluted sites, the ongoing industrial contamination of our soil, our water, and our air that threatens our drinking water source and the communities that live around those industrial and legacy polluted sites. Today we're going to take you on a quick loop. It'll be about an hour, 15 minutes. We're going to drive by some priority contaminated sites in North Memphis. We've done a nerdy deep dive of research on all of their permits, all the regulations, all of the history of contamination at those sites that you have in your tour guides. So we're going to give you top to bottom, answer all the questions you have about those sites, and most importantly, the way that you can take action right now. Memphis is an industrial town. We have a long history of industry. A lot of these sites, like the Pennechems facility that you see, came to be during World War II. There was a big push for industrialization in Memphis in support of the war effort. A lot of facilities popped up during World War II to support production of chemicals, other products to support the war. Now, all of this predated the EPA and the modern regulations of industrial sites and protection of our environment that we know to exist today. So a lot of the legacy pollution that we'll learn about comes from that legacy of industry just, dumping their waste out the back door because we didn't have any regulations that told them otherwise. But this is PMC Biogenics. They produce chemicals on site, formerly Humco. They are one of our biggest water users in Shelby County. 4 private wells that they use to pump their 451 million gallons of water a year. They pay for the permit alone to operate those wells, so that the permit is $100 per well. So for the 451 million gallons of water that they used in 2019, they paid $400. So they would run those, it's called pump and treat, run it, treat the water, dump it into surface water continuously. That has contained the plume. They are one of the top, but there are many more, about 20 or so above them. This is the site that we're stopped at over here. So if you take a look out your window, this big old field out here, this all used to be filled with industry. So if you look in this guide, some of these pictures that we pulled from old newspaper articles, of pictures of what this used to look like. So you can see all the industry that used to be on site. This site map on the first page shows you what this whole field out here used to look like. So this facility was also developed in support of the war. So in the 1930s, an entity called Hayden Chemical Company developed a chemical production facility in support of the war to produce chemicals to support the war. In 1952, Velsical Chemical purchased that facility. They used the facility to produce pesticides. So back in the day, remember this is all before the EPA, they produced pesticides and can cause cancer and other health issues. However, back then, we did not know that they were dangerous. They learned, oh, these chemicals are very toxic. We should not be producing them and using them. So in 1988, the EPA banned the pesticides that were produced here. What did Velsical Chemical do? They found another market. So they decided to continue producing the chemicals that the United States deemed toxic for export internationally to countries where they had not yet been banned. In 1997, the United Nations finally banned these pesticides internationally. And that was really the beginning of the end for Velsical. Velsical today obviously is not producing anything on site. They've got about 8 employees total, 4 of them hold equity in the company. And they broker chemicals internationally. They produce like plasticizers, other things, not the toxic chemicals. They produce other chemicals at 2 facilities in China and sell them internationally. So technically, they are still in operation. how much would it cost to clean all of this up? And how much would Velsicle be on the hook for? TDEC came back and they said, and I screenshotted the proof of claim so you can look at it in detail. They said to really clean up the site and all of Cypress Creek, it would cost $233 million. Velsicle's not the only one responsible for the creek. Their portion of that $233 million is $143 million. In the 60s, they channelized it. So how did they do that? They scooped up all the sediments of the creek and they plot them on the banks of the creek so they could go back and pour concrete, right? Then they backfilled in on these sides and left all the sediments alongside the creek. What do we know about the sediments that were in the creek? All the dirt in the bottom of the creek. What do we know about that? It was full of all the toxic things that all these industries had been dumping for decades. And they left it just in everyone's backyards. They went down the creek. There were about 170 homes that have backyards that front Cypress Creek just in this immediate area. They sampled 129 of those homes to see what was in that contaminated soil that was left behind. This map that Michaela is so wonderfully presenting gives us a little more. This is the science. So bear with me for a second. Regional soil screening levels. This is kind of the level that for this region, it's just kind of nationally set. This is the level at which you can have a contaminant in the soil, but it's not really a health hazard. So that level for dieldrin is 0.034 parts per million. So anything above 0.034 parts per million of dieldrin in soil is a health hazard. There were about 18 homes. Of those homes, nearly all, I think all but 2, and those were farther, some down here, nearly all had levels of dieldrin above 0.034. Only a handful had them above 2.5, which is really bad. But those are the only ones that they cleaned up. So everyone above this level, but below 2.5, they left it in place. They still have dieldrin in their soils in their backyards. So that is the remediation that was done on 18 homes. Again, only the ones in exceedance of 2.5 parts per million of dieldrin. The others were left in place. And that is the extent of cleanup that has happened down Cypress Creek. Going to visit the North Hollywood dump. This little map gives you kind of a simple overview of what the site looks like. Everything behind this fence you see, that's all dump. That's all old dump. Everything across the street behind that fence is also the dump. So there was the west dump and the east dump. We're standing at the west dump right now. It was run by the city of Memphis. They opened the dump in the 1930s. It accepted all of the municipal waste from the city. They had a big pile of leaking 55-gallon drums. They'd bring them here and leave them in the dump. Because of the dumping of, organic waste, of chemicals, of all the things that were being dumped here, residents back in the day described the dump as constantly burning. So there were fires that would just burn endlessly in the dump. A 1948 Memphis Press-Simeter report described it as, it is a good 20 feet deep in places, several blocks wide. It supports a shanty town of scavengers, breeds billions of flies, and is peopled by rats of fantastic proportion. Residents constantly complained of the noxious smells, of the constant burning that came out of the dump. It was really seriously not a good place to be, but many people scavenged and tried to make a living off of the dump's content.
We used to walk in Hyde Park, Douglas, going to church.
Yeah.
And we smelled the halls. We just called it
Oh,
hallway.
Yep.
Well, it was a hallway. House,
Yep.
church shoes. I don't know how we did it, but it was a hallway.
And so the concern came up from those hogs that were eating, right, and being raised, eating feed on the dump, and then were sold to butchers for human consumption. So that's what you see now. It is a super fun site, but it was deprioritized in 1997. So they're no longer doing active remediation on site, but they are monitoring. They are required to come out every 5 years and check the soil, check the all the monitoring wells on site, and check the 2 bodies of water, the dredge pond and there's an abandoned fish pond, where many residents continue to fish out of those ponds. Consistently, the fish are tested, high levels of contaminants are found in them, and the fish are killed, but the residential fishing continues because some folks depend upon those sites to live.